All right, go ahead, Rochelle.
All right, thank you. So hello to everybody. Welcome, happy Friday if you're here now. It has been a great week of learning, and especially the last couple of days here. So I'm always excited to talk about things that I'm doing in my classroom with my students and to learn from everybody who is joining in. And I will tell you a little bit about myself and how I got to be teaching about these topics in my classroom. But for today's session, we'll be looking at and talking about artificial intelligence, augmented virtual reality, potentially could be mixed reality. You know, you got the AR, AR, MR, VR, XR, lots of different realities. So anyway, thank you for joining in. If you have any questions, drop them into the chat. But of course, we only have 50 minutes. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm very consistent across like all platforms. RDENE915, RDENE915. So Twitter, Instagram, Clubhouse. My email, my blog is that, my podcast, same thing. If you have a question, send me a message. If you have a resource to share, send me a message. If you have a question, I don't know the answer, I will get back to you. I am not an expert by any means, but I'm somebody who just loves learning. And I've been really fortunate with the opportunities that I've had with my students over the last couple of years that have kind of put me into this topic actually to talk about. So just quickly about me, my name is Rochelle Dene Poth, and I am currently I teach Spanish, 4 levels of Spanish, and I teach a course called STEAM, What's Next in Emerging Technology, to 8th graders. And it's kind of an elective course for them. They have to pick 2 different courses for the whole year. And we do like a 6-day rotation. So I have a group of students days 1, 2, 3, and the other group 4, 5, 6. And that course came to be because we got a grant about 6 years ago. And me teaching French and Spanish at the time, the arts, I was asked to teach like a STEAM course. And at the time I was asked to teach about hummingbirds. And when my principal called me in and said, well, we're going to have you teach hummingbirds and connect it with French and Spanish. And I was really confused because my mind was thinking of hummingbirds like outside hummingbird, not a robot that you program and coding and all of that with bird brain technology. So I didn't let him know that. I Googled it. I found out what a hummingbird was. And for 2 years, I really wasn't that great at it, but I had an amazing time learning from my students, with and from my students. And then the 3rd year, I was like ready to go. And he said, you know what, we're going to shift that into the 7th grade. You need something else to teach. What do you want to teach about? And I named like 10 different topics. AR, VR, artificial intelligence were part of them. And so that's how I came up with the What's Next in Emerging Technology. So since then, I've been teaching about, the basics like digital citizenship. We look at technology. We do like game-based learning, presentations. But a big part of what we spend our year doing is AR, VR, and AI. But then I also moved that into my Spanish classes because they saw me doing this with my STEAM course students in the library one time. And they said, well, why can't we do any of that cool stuff? And I didn't have a good answer. And so I have been using some of the AR, VR with my students in Spanish, and also this past year did some with artificial intelligence with them. And so that's kind of where my experience comes from in the classroom. I am this year now the past president of ISTE's Teacher Education Network, and I'm involved in some different learning communities. So I love to learn, love to connect, and more importantly, probably, I love to share what we are doing in my classroom and what I've learned from students. And so I do have a blog. I've written a couple books in the past few years. And so some of the ideas I'll share with you here today are things that you can find on my blog, in the podcast, where I basically just talk to myself. But I also do blog for Getting Smart, which is how I actually got started with learning about artificial intelligence. So for anybody who is looking to get started, what I plan to do here in our time today is to give you kind of like the path I took. If you're looking at, how do I start with this in my classroom with my students, or how can I learn about this more myself, which there is so much out there, like we cannot possibly be the experts. So the path that I took is first, I actually wrote a blog for Getting Smart about 4 years ago now. I had no idea how much AI we were using and interacting with on a daily basis, and went through, wrote the blog. It pushed me to do some research. Then I started to do a couple things with my students in my classrooms with the AI. Still didn't know a lot. I enrolled in the ISTE U course on artificial intelligence, which over that summer, like that helped prepare me so well. And I always keep, now I should grab it while I'm here. I highly recommend this book, Teaching AI by Michelle Zimmerman, for any educator that's looking to get started and wants to know like all different components of it, to have activities, resources, links, definitions. Also, if you're concerned with the ISTE standards. So I have that book, and then I'll show you one more since right here. There's also this one, Artificial Intelligence in Education. If you're looking for, and I do have these linked in my resources too, which I'll share with you, but if you're looking for kind of like the whole history of it and you want to know more detail, like those two books I definitely recommend. Now with my students, I always start with basic conversation. What is artificial intelligence? Tons of videos out there. And what I will share with you is a link to a Google document, because from all of the presentations that we all go to, we all have our slides and the presentations. And now the chances of us going back through all of those after a conference, I know for myself, not so much. So about 2 years ago, I decided to just make a Google document that I can share that has all of the links. It might have some screenshots, it has examples, it has anything that you need from this presentation. So instead of having to flip through Rochelle's like 50 slides, you can see everything in that nice, neat Google document. So I will share that with you. And there are links to video playlists in there in these AI videos that I'll share with you here. So I start with what is AI? And there are lots of definitions, lots of ideas. And I try not to give a full blanket statement to students initially. Like we look at some videos, we have conversations. And then at the end of the day, like I want them, one of the first assignments that I had given them was like, what is artificial intelligence? What is machine learning? What are some examples? And I had several students who went Google, looked it up, Wikipedia, just copied and pasted the answer in. And then I read it and I went, wow, like that's very technical definition. So if somebody asks you, what is AI? Are you going to be able to give them that full answer back? And they're like, no. And I said, okay, well, how would you describe it to somebody who has no idea what it is? Like, what are the words that you would use that you could convey to somebody that would help them to understand it? So basically, I mean, these are, definitions that I've gotten that we've used in our class, and we look at the different components of it. So we have artificial intelligence, machine learning, and often, there is confusion, like thinking that they're the same thing, but there's not. Now, machine learning, of course, it's based on like data, and it can classify and analyze all of this information over time and find patterns, which is great. And so if you're doing searches and things like that, artificial intelligence can then learn and adapt over time, and it can reason, and it uses massive data. So one thing that I've done with my students with Google searches, for example, is I had them Google the Dewey Decimal System, and to see the number of results that it gets, and it pulls from all of these resources in less than a second. And then I had them look up artificial intelligence. And then I asked them for a random term just to see like how fast technology works, how it sorts through all of the information and finds patterns and everything, and just to open up a conversation. And so we use that kind of as a starting point. Also, when we look for definitions of artificial intelligence, for example, we'll still do the same like Google search. And it's always interesting to see like which one comes to the beginning, like which is the first one listed and what's the resource. So besides learning about these emerging technologies, it's also really good when we do use things like the Google search to teach students other things about like reliable information and facts, and what are the sources that you're using, and does it mean that it's like the best resource because it comes up there first. So lots of learning potential possibilities. So anyway, we start with the definitions and then make some comparisons like the neural network, and talking about like, just imagine like our brains, like how fast we process and sort information, and equating that. And again, like I like to have students basically go through some different videos, very short clips. I recommend the crash course, which you can see here playing in the background. Again, that will be linked and shared with you in that Google document. But when students see some of these, sometimes and teaching about this year was a little bit more challenging because we started the year virtual for the first 9 weeks, and then we've been hybrid up until this Tuesday. And so the nice thing about teaching about AI as opposed to the AR VR is that I can have students interact and do a lot of the different activities without having to physically be in the same classroom space. So that's been one benefit, is like, I can share the video, we can have the discussions, we have all of these other technology tools to have students collaborate and communicate with each other. But I love to start with like a hook or something that's interesting. And so for anybody looking for, you go to YouTube or you Google search, try to find some videos, it's hard to find really good quality videos that aren't, really excessively long, or with the content and the pop-ups and things like that. So I definitely recommend Crash Course, because not only does it have this intro kind of video, it goes through and kind of advances more with the different topics. So it looks at artificial intelligence, it looks at machine learning, it looks at neural networks, deep learning, and it just keeps building and building. So depending on if it's your own interest, if it's students and they want to kind of like direct themselves and go through the whole like crash course about AI, it's very friendly, and the characters in it, like the robot and the students, each year that I use this, I always ask them for feedback. They really enjoy learning from this, and they're able to then put into their own terms and give examples about what is artificial intelligence and what is not artificial intelligence. And then of course we have even bigger discussions, like what are the benefits, what are the negatives and the concerns that we need to have in our mind when it comes to AI. And so it is a lot of fun. Right now my students are working on an independent project, and it's entirely up to them whatever they want to do when it comes to AI. If they want to make a chatbot, for example, which some of them are trying to do, some are looking into making an app, but I've provided like a lot of different resources for them, because I want them to be excited about it, but also not to be totally stressed about it. So we will see over the next couple of weeks how that goes. Like giving students that opportunity to explore on their own and then engage them in conversations, I think it's really beneficial. It's great for me because they push my thinking a lot, and I like it to be more of kind of a discussion, like we're learning together. And so this is kind of my path. But again, depending on your role, the content area that you teach, like I didn't think I could bring AI into my Spanish classes, but I worked on a curriculum guide through ISTE last year, and there is a lesson in there on the use of translators, which is something that I've been doing a battle with in my Spanish classes for years. And not so much that I tell students like, don't ever use them. I just say like, okay, it's a resource, but it doesn't understand, our slang or human context, or can't figure out the meaning really quickly. And so using that I help to kind of co-write, and using that with my students and teaching them about AI and machine learning and what are the benefits. Like it was a great experience for those students as well. So the video, as it's been playing in the background, if you continue with the crash course, you can see all the different, it has like 21 different videos that go from the basics all the way through. So I definitely recommend checking those out. The other thing that comes up a lot, and this image is actually from the course that I took with ISTE about what does the future look like with artificial intelligence. Now, lots of conversations out there about, will it replace humans? Will we lose jobs? Will teachers be replaced by AI? And all valid concerns. I have some statistics and things I can share as well, but the idea is that we use it to kind of help us to like maybe free up some time. Like I tell my students, what I like is I like to be able to understand where you are in terms of learning. So if you can complete an assignment or an assessment or some task with a digital tool, and then instead of me having to sit down and sort through all of the information and then like 2 or 3 days later, then be able to come back to you, if I can quickly get an idea of where you are in terms of learning, and then that extra time that I have saved, I can have a conversation with you one-on-one, then that's the benefit. Or for students who, there are some tools that are out there that, like one a couple of years ago, we used it with Socrates, and it had math and I think reading at the time. And students could start on the same activity, but based on the time that it took them to respond, if they were correct or incorrect, it like created their personalized learning pathway using the AI in real time. And so they might have started the same activity, but based on their specific needs, it kind of just kept navigating in a different way to make it more personalized for them. Collaborative learning, personal tutors to be able to have access to these. So these are just topics of conversation that we have. And I always ask the students, well, what do you think about this? What would you think about, the use of a chatbot? In the course that I took, we had to create things like a chatbot. And one of them, it was, I don't know if it was suggested or if I just thought about where we get those same questions sometimes, like, oh, I wish I had it recorded so I could just hit play. And some people had then created, a chatbot where the common questions. So as a teacher, if you're teaching, like if I teach a verb conjugation in class, granted, I'm available with all of these different messaging platforms and tools that we have to connect with students today, especially after this past year. But what if I have, I mean, I interact with a chatbot probably at least 3 times a day, because you go on a website and it pops up. And I've encouraged my students sometimes to like go through the process and see like the conversation as they're building their own. But teaching a verb lesson, I did create one where it kind of recapped the lesson. And if students would ask a question, I had it programmed where it would give the response and it would reaffirm kind of what the assignment was, for example. So there's lots of ways that we can use this. But again, it's important to have the conversation. So talking about the impact, these are just some statistics that I had pulled. 1924, I always talk about this one. So it's crazy. That was almost 100 years ago. The traffic cops in New York were manually changing the lights in the city. And so automation, of course, we know came along. And so there were all of these traffic cops that were going to be seemingly displaced, but they might have lost that job of manually flipping the switch for the lights, but they shifted into another position. Whether they were on patrol or they were back at the precinct, I think was what they were talking about. So it's not that they fully lost jobs, it just pushed and shifted to a different type of work. And we've seen that over the years with like the automation that's happening. CNET back in September, there was like 120 million workers need to be retrained because of AI. And the one about the robots replacing humans by 2030, which doesn't, I mean, that doesn't feel quite so, it's still a little bit of time away, but 25% of jobs. So does that mean that all of these people are going to be out of work? Like the jobs that exist now, even 5 years ago, some of them did not exist. So jobs are constantly being created, new jobs, new opportunities. And so those are the conversations that we have in my class, is like, what about things like, say, Uber? I ask my students, how many of you have been in Uber? And I'm surprised when some of the 9th graders say, oh yeah, I use Uber Eats all the time. And I just laugh about it. And I said, but years ago, I remember the first time I heard somebody even mention Uber, and I had no idea what it was. That was probably 2016 or 2015 maybe. And look at it now, it's like, it's a common thing. And how many other similar Uber and Lyft, and we have all of these other technologies and opportunities that are out there and different jobs that exist that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we didn't know of. And so Michelle Zimmerman, who go down here, the author of the book, talked about FETC at a conference last year and the year prior about it's just going to be creating different types of jobs. And so what we need to do as educators, one, help students to understand these technologies. 2, help them to develop a lot of skills, like especially to be flexible in learning and to have these skills that are transferable into different areas of work, because we really don't know what types of jobs will exist in 5 or 10 years or longer into the future. And so giving students the chance to kind of explore these emerging technologies that are continuing to increase in the use in our everyday lives is important. And then just a couple other statistics there on the screen, which I won't read to you, but the one is we're pretty close. I mean, the end of 2021, and that is a big jump. So, oops, here we go. Here is something that I found to be quite interesting, and I shared this with my students. 10 ways that we use, on average, people use AI every day. And I got this out of a Forbes article, and I've kept it in here because it's just interesting. So if you look through the list on a daily basis, how many would you get out of 10? I laughed because I told my students for at least, I mean, ever since I had read this up until this past November, the highest I would have ever gotten would have been a 7 or an 8, depending on if I was away somewhere and I was using Uber for commuting. But I don't have smart home devices. And I had never watched Netflix until November. And there was shock, like, what do you mean I just never watched Netflix. But now I've watched Netflix. And so the highest I could get most days would be an 8 or a 9. But for my students, and I predicted for them, I said, I would guess probably some of you are at a 7. And a lot of them they have their phones, the facial recognition, they have smart home devices. Some of them, like, amazingly may have the banking and fraud detection. Who knows at this point? But definitely with the Amazon and Netflix, a lot of them say, oh yeah, I'm on my parents' account and I make purchases and I watch Netflix and all of that. So it's just a good conversation starter to have. And it's out of curiosity. So I like to include that one in there with my students and with anybody if I'm doing presentations. So the next thing that we look at types of artificial intelligence. And For you, if you are, and again, looking at your roles, I haven't seen anybody, and if you've just joined in recently, let me know. Oh, and somebody else had never watched Netflix. Yes, it started in November for me, and I've just been watching one show, and that's it. I didn't watch TV in like 2 years, so I was like, wasn't missing anything. But anyway, for anybody who has joined in, please drop into the chat, where you're joining from, what your role is, or what level you're in, just because if when I see that, then I can maybe give you some extra examples, since I am speaking from kind of like a high school teacher perspective, but also as somebody I'm currently taking a couple of different courses to learn some different programming and areas of AI, which I'll share with you. But it's fun and it's exciting and it's fun to learn with them. So we look at different types of AI. As I mentioned, my students are working independently on projects right now of their choosing, whatever they want to do. And they're a little bit nervous about it because in their minds, they're thinking it has to be something like really big and really time consuming. And so I say, but it doesn't have to be. It can be something very simple. And I told them today, because I had a bunch of questions, and I said, look, I want you to have fun. I want you to learn about it. I want you to explore. And I gave them this long list of resources of things to check out, projects that students have created. And I said, but the idea is you can make it as little. And I said, well, and I don't mean really as little, like it's a project, so it should take you longer than just a few minutes. I said, but I want you to just decide, do you want to put just a couple of things, like try making a chatbot with this website and this website, or maybe building an app and making a chatbot, or do you want to do something more extensive and elaborate? I said, I just want you to have fun, to learn about it, to be able to share with other people and to be informed. And like, who knows what they'll come up with. But we look at chatbots, and also I've told them a couple funny stories about, on Amazon, even using personal assistants with like Alexa, how quickly I have an Alexa, it's unplugged most of the time, but ordering something where I say, Alexa, and I say, Amazon, I'm searching your most recent orders. Okay, I see you ordered, and it says, would you like to reorder? Yes, please. And then it's done. And it's totally time save, amazing. When it comes to some of the chatbots, I did Amazon too. And it tells you, the chatbot has a name, but I like to do this sometimes with my students in the classroom and say, okay, now how do you think that works like that? How do they know what to ask and how's it programmed? So then we take a look at it, and then I get them to interact with some of the different ways that they can create their own chatbot. But every single day I ask them, okay, who went on a website yesterday and had the chatbot pop up? They're like, oh, we did. And I said, did anybody talk with the chatbot? And so it makes for a lot of fun and good conversations. We look at, in my class especially, translators, not the greatest, but I will say that even I have an app on my iPad, and it is called Seeing AI, as in like Seeing AI. And you click, it's amazing for accessibility, but you can click like person, barcode, a scene. So you can hold it up, hit the button, and it will scan the scene, and it will read to you. And also says on the screen what it's seeing. And it might say like person sitting at the counter next to probably a dog or something, for example. But even with translators, you can hold up like Google Translate and hold it over something, and it instantly translates it into a different language. So we're looking at like artificial intelligence and translators and accessibility. So many benefits in that area. Video games, this was huge with my students. I've had some students who throughout the whole entire year were doing like AR, VR, all of these things. I'm so excited about it. And they're just like, yeah, that's great. It's awesome. Okay, what's the next thing? But when they found out that their AI has been in gaming since the 1950s, that kind of like, I don't know, sparked some curiosity, and some of the students dove right in and really wanted to learn a lot more about it. So like, you just never know what that one thing is that's going to be, that's going to like spark that curiosity or the interest for students or engage students in learning. And so it's a lot of fun to have these conversations with them. Smart cars, maybe not so much lately, but Uber and Lyft and the autonomous deliveries, how all of that works, it's just amazing. And then common uses, like I like to think about my everyday experience. Do I use speech recognition? Do I use AI for planning? Like there is, and I can't think of what it is called right now, but it sends you an email and it kind of sorts through your calendar and helps you with planning. And I don't know, sometimes you think, oh yeah, that really makes it easy for me. But and then the other side is like, it is a digital assistant, and I'd have to look it up on my email to find out, but it's somebody else had sent it to me to kind of sort through calendars and to find a common meeting time. And it was quite interesting. So of course I had to sign up and explore. And every night I get an email. I think it's xi.ai, but I will find it and I will add it to my Google Documents. Everybody can see it. But it can make life easier. It makes those suggestions for things. Your smartphone, it suggests different modes for you. And I joke about smart home devices. I have done panel discussions on AI with some different educators. We did like a series of like 6 of them because the conversation was so rich. We're like, yeah, I think we need to have a part 2 and a part 3. And actually 2 weeks ago, we did a podcast with, let's see, Brad Wade, who does a lot with artificial intelligence, Nancy Blair Black, who works with the ISTE, the GM and all the curriculum guides and everything with the ISTU course. We were talking about artificial intelligence and it was just a great conversation. But I always joke when we have these talks about like smart home devices, and I say like, I don't need for my home to know me and adjust. Like I'm fine adjusting the temperature, I'm fine changing the lights, but it's interesting how that works. Or like even the suggestions on going on Amazon and thinking, yeah, I'd really like to get a new book. And how many millions of books are out there? But based on your past ordering history, then it suggests something for you. And you're like, oh, well, that's kind of nice. Or like Netflix, if you're watching Netflix now and it's like, you've watched this, here are some others you might like. There is something for that. Like I do appreciate that fact. But then at the same point, how many times have you looked at something on Amazon, then you go on Facebook and then you have ads popping up and you're like, but I really don't want to see those ads somewhere else. So all of that information is interacting. And that's the kind of conversations I have with my students. It's like, we have to be careful with the information we're putting out there. You want to make sure that, whatever you're using, like always be mindful of that. So we really do have a lot of great conversations about these uses, like the online services. And so flipping through some of these, like I said, I start with what are these definitions, show some videos. There's tons of great videos out there showing humanoids and a lot of robots, and then just having conversations and then looking at some specifics, like the ones that you see on the screen, like the IBM has the chatbots for good. Students, if you're looking at design thinking or you want to help students to, develop empathy, you can look at some of the activities that are available there. Google AI Experiments is one of our favorites because not just that it offers the AI, but there are also augmented virtual reality experiments available there too. And the ones that we start with that are a lot of fun, that my students definitely have a good time laughing at me, is during the quick draw. And one thing that I'll recommend to you, to everybody who's joining right now, is always open up another tab or another couple of tabs if there is something that kind of catches your attention, and give it a try. Like Quick Draw. If you've never done anything with Google AI Experiments or Quick Draw, I say open up the tab, go to Quick Draw and try it out. It is fantastic to use because it uses like a neural network and it gives you a word. And within 20 seconds, it tries to guess what you're drawing. Now, as I'm trying to draw with the mouse, actual mouse, not even the trackpad, it's guessing and it's saying, I see an elbow, I see a bar, and then it keeps going and it's sorting through all of these images that have been stored in the data sets. And it's trying to kind of sort through and figure out. So if I start and I draw a circle, it goes through and it gets rid of any possibility that has anything to do with anything besides a circle. And then it might say, I see a wheel, I see this. It also notices patterns in your drawing. And so for me, often, for some reason, it always thinks I'm drawing an elbow. But if it doesn't guess it in 20 seconds, it might say, I don't know, I'm stumped. Or sometimes it guesses it in like 3 or 4 seconds and it gives you 6 and then it shows you your drawings at the end. So that's a fun one to use. Semantris has words and it's word association. There's 2 different types of games that you can play. One is kind of like Tetris a little bit. So anybody who's a Tetris fan might like that because it's kind of blocks. But I would recommend trying those out. Botsify is another one that you can explore. And again, like I have all of these shared in my document. And then you can even use things like avatars for students who might be, for me as a language teacher, sometimes my students don't necessarily want to speak in front of their peers. But if they have, and we know on social media, you have the filter, you have whatever it is, like Snapchat, of course, or Instagram, you get that level of comfort. So making an avatar, it's fun for students. Those are a couple of different ones you can explore. I've used Telegami a couple of times, my talking avatar, and maybe have students or yourself make an avatar and you share that like as a way to introduce yourself to students. That could be something a little bit different that also brings in like these emerging technologies and trends into our classrooms too. Another favorite. So time to open another tab If you've never used the Akinator Web Genius, now is your chance to do it. I recommend that you try to think of somebody, a thing, an animal, a person that you think there's no way that this Web Genius could guess, and see how many tries it takes until it actually guesses it for you. And if you do that, whether it's now, whether it's later, I would love to know how many guesses it took for the Akinator to guess who you were thinking of. And you could send me, on Twitter, on Instagram, send me an email, or here, if you do it now, to Ardenae915. The most I've ever heard of anybody getting, I think it was like a 48. The first time I did this, I thought of Don Quixote as a Spanish teacher. I thought, it's not going to guess. 14, took 14 tries. The fun thing about it is when students do this, or you can start to see kind of the thought process, all the programming coding that went into it, with like this flow chart of questions that must exist where it eliminates based on your answer. So if you're thinking of an animal, it might say, does it live in the wild? Does it live inside? And you might say like, I don't know, not sure, maybe, probably. There's like 5 options. And as you answer, it sorts through and kind of goes and loops around to kind of try to figure out who or what you're thinking of. So try out the Akinator. And then you can have a discussion with students about like, well, how did that happen? How did they program that? Why did it come to that answer? Why was it stumped? So if you haven't opened those tabs, then I would definitely recommend opening those tabs. Now, when it comes to other resources, those are, and actually, you know what? I'm going to drop this in here now just to verify that it works. I made a bit.ly and I made it so I could remember. There it is. So if you open that, that should open up a Google document that has like, it probably has more than what I've said so far, and it still has the AR/VR, but it has the links for all of these in there. So you don't have to worry about writing them all down. So you can click them and go to them. But for some of them that I recommend, and ones that I've used, Amazon Lex, you can sign up for, not so much with students. I mean, it asks, in some cases, it might ask for like a credit card, but sometimes it doesn't. But with privacy and security, depending on who you're working with, but if it's just you, try Amazon Lex. AI World School, I'll talk about a little bit more here in a minute, is I have really enjoyed it. It offers courses, it has resources, it has some free play activities for students. And I enrolled in 2 of the courses to go through the different modules with my students. It has videos, it has challenges for creating chatbots and apps and all kinds of things, like from basics all the way up to like Python coding. And so AI World School is one that I found out about last year and then just started to use with my students. And then a couple of these I mentioned, the IBM chatbots. Ready AI is based in Pittsburgh. They also have a series of books. They have the AI in a Box. There's a Ready AI Lab that's in Pittsburgh, but they have some different books that you can actually get on Amazon. They also offer some resources on their website. So I would highly recommend checking them out. Pittsburgh has a lot of great things happening in the area of artificial intelligence, has for years, but even more so recently. I wrote an article last year, a couple of articles about artificial intelligence and the increase in the number of people enrolling in courses, trying to find out information about AI. And even in Pittsburgh, there's Po Shen Lo is a professor at Carnegie Mellon, and he has done a lot with math and math competitions, but he put out a call for people to join to create an app last year that would be an app for COVID. And it's available on Google Play on iOS. It's Novid. And it's basically, like a tracker and alert system that he created. A couple other really interesting AI things that are happening in Pittsburgh too. But anyway, the AI World School, just a little screenshot here. They have 3 flagship courses. You can learn based on the age group. As an adult, I got the Primus and the Meritus because I'm using it with my students who in 8th grade, they're right on the borderline, the 13 and 14. Each course has modules and you have a video, and they have the robots, and they teach about the information like what's artificial intelligence, what's machine learning. There's a quiz at the end of them. And so I've really enjoyed using that with my students. And I've also gotten a lot of good feedback from them. Now, that is something that a parent could get for a child to work on their own. I just chose to use that and kind of screen share with my students in class. And then here are some other resources that are also in that document. And the books that I shared with you, the Teaching AI and the Artificial Intelligence in Education, a couple other websites that you could go to for some free resources and lots of information, the AI for K-12, the AI for All, and the other ones, the Getting Smart series. I think had it not been for that blog and wanting to learn more, I would probably have not much of an idea about artificial intelligence, but that gave me the push. And I wrote that first article a couple of years ago, and I just really enjoy learning more about it. Again, not an expert, but knowing enough to get my students started. And now I'm excited to see what they actually create. So that is the portion on AI. And now we will shift for the rest of the session until till we end with AR VR. So that link that I dropped in there, I'm hoping that it worked so that everybody can get the links that I've shared. Okay, AR, VR, MR, and there's also XR. And we don't have a ton of time for this. But again, with my students, what I like to do, beginning of the year, when we start AR, VR, it's not always the beginning of the year, but it's funny because their perception of what it is and what it isn't is, oh, I already use Snapchat. I know all about augmented reality. Or I have some students who are like, oh, I just got an Oculus Quest for Christmas. And they were so excited because we had already been learning about AR, VR. And then they were sending messages over the holiday break, like, what kind of apps can I get? What should I be using? And then coming back, and they were so excited because they knew how it worked and understood it. And then they actually had that opportunity to try it. Now in this school year, since we were virtual and then hybrid, typically I have a lot of headsets, and we have Merge Cubes, and I have 4 of the Oculus Go headsets, which I really can't use anymore, but we couldn't do all those same things. And so it was a little bit more challenging, especially, working with a lot of my students staying virtual, to give them experiences. But luckily there are so many tools out there and apps that we can explore that they can learn about it and try on their own. So again, like with the artificial intelligence, always start with definitions. And sometimes I just say, like, think of an example. Augmented reality, a lot of people think of Pokemon Go and being able to see your surroundings. Sometimes the IKEA app where you're like, I'd really like to know what this piece of furniture would look like in this space, but I really don't want to go to the store to find it. So kind of being able to see your surroundings. Virtual reality, typically with a headset on, you don't have to have it on. Sometimes it does cause motion sickness depending on that, but you're immersed in it and you can feel that experience. Now, for me as a language teacher, it's been great using, like, the first tool that I use, I'll talk about is Nearpod, because instead of me saying, oh yeah, just imagine what it would be like to walk around in Argentina, I can actually put that in their hands, which even though they're not there, they can get a closer look. They can, if they have their own headset at home, they can put the headset on and kind of experience it. And then mixed reality is you have the merging of the two. So you can see your whole real world space, but you have this other layer on top of it. And so there are movies. There was the movie, Minority Report years ago with Tom Cruise. Anytime I bring that up, my students are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And we've seen it, and you're like interacting, or like Terminator and things like that, where you don't need anything. Hospitals, medical field, military, government, everybody is using, yep, Cynthia, that's right, all of these. So I tell students, like, you don't, oh yeah, Johnny Mnemonic, you don't need to have, like, let me get the whole big manual. So I have to fix the airplane. Okay, but I don't want to have all this equipment. So I have these glasses, and through my glasses, I can still see the plane, but I see all of the information I need to fix it. Or surgery, you don't need all of the equipment. You can do things remotely. In my Minority Report, yeah, that's what I always think about. And that seems like so far back, and we have these things now. And so for my students, again, we have a lot of different videos that we look at. And I want them, like Nearpod is the one that I started with first, honestly. Whenever somebody says, where should I start? Nearpod, because there are lessons available specific to virtual tours, easy to add something in. You don't have to spend a ton of time creating. You have, if you are, let's say, like a guidance counselor in your school, there are virtual college tours. Like, how cool is that? My students in Spanish kept asking me, could you assign a lesson to me? Because I really want to see what this school looks like. And I said, okay, but just the fact that you can do that, it's not the exact same as being there, but beyond just looking like, yeah, this is really nice, we can ask questions. The students become curious, they can look at that space and develop a lot of other things in the process. So they're learning the content that we're teaching. Doesn't matter what grade level you teach or what content area. The students can use this from pre-K all the way up, and lessons are available. And if you haven't used Nearpod, I definitely recommend diving in and trying it, because giving students a chance to kind of explore places, to look at it closely, to develop their own questions. Definitely in my class, developing empathy as they're looking at maybe 3 places in 3 different Spanish-speaking countries, for example. might be the center of a city, it might be a restaurant, it might be some type of building and structure, and seeing the differences and making comparisons between those places and where we live, and developing, now we're looking at social emotional learning skills. That is something else that this, the augmented, the virtual reality helps as well. Students, there's a great video on the list that I share with you about developing empathy, and can VR be used for that? It's also been used for older adults who, for them to not feel isolated, for young kids who have to go to the dentist or to the doctor or something, to put that on to kind of experience something differently. So with Nearpod and having those VR trips, being able to look at a place that we might not necessarily be able to go to ever, like if ever, they have, I think, the black hole, so that's not an option, but giving them that chance to explore. Second Life, I feel like it is, but I had just written a blog post that came out 2 weeks ago, and it's about different VR spaces. So there's Kumo Space, there is Engage VR, there's Frame VR, there's Mozilla Hubs, where you're having these meetings. And that's why I really like teaching students about this. I say, you have no idea, like now we've been interacting online for a year. You don't know, you might have an interview where it's like, it's in virtual reality. So they're simulating that environment for you. So I want you to understand, what are the benefits of this, but also know how to create with it. And so my students really liked using Nearpod and said, can you make more lessons? And I said, well, I can, yes. And luckily, like I was teaching juniors, I had a few students who then went and they made their own Nearpod lessons. They had to do a camping trip. And instead of using like PowerPoint or Google, for example, they decided to use Nearpod, and they put in some virtual tours. They added some 3D objects, which are pretty neat. And then they added in other activities. And so you can get started quickly. That code that's on the screen is also available in the Google document, but that gets you like a 3-month goal to get extras with it. And you can share that with anybody. So if it doesn't work, just let me know. But I do really love using Nearpod because it does enable me to take students like on a quick trip somewhere, even though right now I technically can't. So I always start with Nearpod. And I have a few more here that I'll share with you. In that document, there are definitely more tools than I will mention, but I wanted to name some that like you can get started with really quickly and then have applicability to different grade levels and content areas. Another favorite, 3D Bear. They have lessons. So the screenshot just shows you what it might look like if you go into their lessons library. They have the standards in there. They have the timeline. And again, if you like the one on the screen says from grade 2, I have a friend who teaches social studies, and he said, I would really love to use, virtual reality in my class, but I don't know where to begin. And of course I said first, all right, let's go to Nearpod. So Nearpod worked. But then he also wanted students to create something like to, go into town and tell the history of a place, but use virtual reality. So an augmented reality, actually, in this case too. So he could adapt whatever that grade level was, the content, and it didn't take a ton of time. And so just to give you some kind of images of what 3D Bear looks like, you can, the bottom picture, this is why I always encourage opening tabs, getting the apps on your phone, creating while you're in the session, because you might be doing a presentation like I was there, and somebody puts the big dinosaur behind me, which wasn't obviously in there, but they tweeted it out. I think we did a contest. A good friend of mine, Jamie Donnelly, and I'm going to type her name in the chat, and many people may already know Jamie Donnelly, but she is amazing. There she is there. And I have, since I'm showing books here, I'll show 2. So the first one I would recommend, Learning Transported, was Jamie's first book. And this is a great book to pick up if you really want to get started with all the definitions, AR, VR, you want some lesson plans, you want some tools, you want to know about the headsets and everything. So that was her first book. Her new book, The Immersive Classroom, which has a beautiful cover, continues and has a lot more about AR and VR in it. And so Jamie writes amazing books, but she is by far the expert. I'm not the expert. I'm just the person who, whenever Jamie has some different tools, I bring them in my classroom, and then I'm fortunate that we get to present together a lot of the time, although not so much this year, but hopefully soon. But anyway, Jamie and I were presenting for that. And so 3D Bear, thank you, Cynthia. 3D Bear is a lot of fun to create with. Students enjoy it, teachers enjoy it, and you can do a lot of fun things. And the pictures that are on here, when we were in Texas at TCEA, I think 2 years ago now, 2.5 years ago, we went over to the Alamo, and Jamie put all of these different creatures up there using 3D Bear. Now, the other picture that has the, the chicken and the man was me sitting at the desk in my classroom, just pushing all the different buttons and trying to use it as a way to demonstrate to my students, like, is this augmented or is this virtual reality? And how do you know? And then having that discussion. Of course, it was very curious for them, like why I had that. So 3D Bear, and I'm going to fly through a couple other ones here because I know we're winding down the time, but I want you to at least see what some of these look like. CoSpaces, got these slides from CoSpaces, another great tool. Nice thing about it, and same thing with 3D Bear, you can collaborate. So you can have your students, whether or not they're in the classroom together, collaborate. You can collaborate with other educators. There are already tons of examples available in the library that you can often just copy and then change and make your own. They have lesson plans. Here are some examples. I've had students create these from in the 8th grade all the way up. I had my Spanish students create with this because when they said, why don't we get to do the cool stuff? I said, fine, we're going to use CoSpaces. You're going to work on teams and we're going to do a project. And so lots of possibilities. You can even use it with, if anybody has the Merge Cube. So you can create your CoSpaces project on the Merge Cube and have kind of like a book review, an interactive story, for example. There is also a link in that Google document for you to download a PDF to print out a mini Merge Cube, which that was helpful in our virtual and hybrid experience. So my students at home could do that. But of course, you can even pull the Merge Cube up on your screen and have students kind of scan it. So this is just what it looks like. The classroom, the students working together on the same project, having to be mindful of each other's creations, digital citizenship, great lesson. But also to give them a chance to just explore, create, collaborate. And then whenever they created all of their projects, then we had the headsets and they could go in and explore what every other group created, which it was in Spanish. So it was a good way to review and kind of practice the content that was much more meaningful than doing the worksheets and other things that I had done in the past. So I was glad that they kind of pushed me to dive into using this more than just a Nearpod. So some ideas, I did share these in the document, and there is a code. So if you use that CoSpaces code, it gets you kind of extra days with the Merge add-on, but you can use this at any level. I have a friend, Laura Steinbrink, who her students created CoSpaces stories for elementary students. I've seen elementary students create with this. I did a session with some teachers from I can't remember now, but I was amazed at what these like 3rd and 4th graders had created with CoSpaces. And they were working with students from around the world because you can work in the same project. You just have to assign it. And so love the opportunity for students to create. I even printed out a larger one that took me about 25 minutes to put together. It took my 8th graders about 5 minutes to put together. But that was before I had all of the dollar Merge Cubes a couple of years ago. And so I was trying to, open up a lot of opportunities for students where like 4 of them could interact with it at the same time. Well, actually 3, because one had to hold it. So Merge Cube, just a few other pictures, getting that augmented reality, playing some games. And Merge has a lot of features. They have object viewer, so you can kind of create put the objects in your space without having to have the Merge Cube there and build kind of a virtual exhibit, for example. You can dissect a frog. It has immersive reader, which is fantastic. So looking at accessibility, also, just for me as a language teacher, so my students could listen to it in Spanish. So that works well too, but just a different way to learn, hands-on. Like I would have totally remembered the solar system and the planets if I would have had a Merge Cube when I had science when I was in like 8th grade, to be able to look at that and explore it. Oh yes, Mary Howard does a ton. I've been in some of Mary Howard's presentations. And this is from Merge too, also just to see what it looks like. I mean, here's the layers of the earth, and then here's a volcano. And I know we're almost out of time, so I want to leave you with a couple that are my favorites for creating. One is Figment AR, and I love Figment AR because it's not just AR, it's AR and VR. Through the use of portals, you can go from it just being like AR where you see like a dancing chicken to having a portal that you step into. And my students, by the time I'm done saying what I've just said to you, they've already created something around me and there's a chicken dancing in the background or something. Like they don't need any explanation at all. So what you see, the video playing, I was at a conference in Florida and I decided to take the like 10 minutes that I had available to go down to the beach, not to relax, but to take my iPad and to create an AR to VR experience. So what you're seeing is I'm in the portal turning around with my iPad. So that's not really the beach where I am, but that little frame is the portal that I walked through. So to get back to the real beach, I have to walk into the portal. And now that is, even though it's snowing, it wasn't really snowing, special effects, those characters not on the beach. So you can create portals. And the picture that's on the bottom right, Jamie Donnelly took of me during a presentation to show what the view looks like as you're creating. And then she was in the portal and I was across the way. Coincidentally, that's the same time the dinosaur was almost over my head. So Figment AR is one I recommend. You should try it. And the last one that I'll leave you with is called Thing with a Y. And again, same trip in Florida. Oops, there we go. You can see the different things moving around. So great for conversation. Is it augmented? Is it virtual reality? But just having some fun creating on my own when I had some time. But it's great for the students to create too. So interactive a little bit for storytelling. So anybody could create with this. Students could tell a story. Teachers could use this to like, here's my classroom and create some crazy background with characters and people in it. And the other thing that's really great about it is that it's kind of similar to if anybody was using HP Reveal and Aurasma. So you can have a target trigger image. I use Tara Martin's book. Now, if you have this app and you were to scan the book on my screen on Amazon, you would see this, what's playing. I created that. I downloaded, I uploaded, I did everything to it, but then the team at Thing actually made it so now it's in their library. So if you get the Thing app and you scan Tara's book, you should see what just played there in the background. So there's a lot of potential for students to create or for teachers to create with this. Just fun to get started with. So hopefully on a Friday, when you're looking for something to do or over the weekend, try Figment, try Thing and create, but definitely follow Jamie Donnelly. She just finished 31 days of AR VR in EDU for March, different app and tool every single day, tons of them out there. In the document, I think I have my link to some of the articles. So if you want to know more, let me know, connect with me, send me a message. Hopefully you got some ideas. And again, in that document, there are a lot of others I didn't get a chance to talk about, but hopefully these are things you can get started with or have some fun with when it comes to AI or the AR or the VR. So anybody has any questions, ask here. I've been trying to keep track in the chat and or reach out to me on Twitter. I would love to connect and hear what you're doing or hear if you try these or your guesses from the Akinator. And thanks for joining in today. It's great to be here with you all.